Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever it is, wherever you are, folks. Welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat. And as always, this is our spoilery discussion show about something that's happened recently in nerd entertainment. And this week it is about the reboot of the Animaniacs, which just premiered on Hulu this past week. And if you haven't seen it, and you don't want to have it spoiled, then please do not continue watching.
Question
Uh,
though, can you really say that we're spoiling an episodic series?
yeah, it's a sketch comedy show, so the same thing. I guess you could. I mean, there are people who might get spoiled by somebody mentioned something really funny, or recreating a skit on, say, Saturday Night Live. But
Uh,
realistically, if you're not doing the whole bit, then it's not really spoiling that much.
hmm
But that said, we always put out the warning because we don't want anybody to have anything spoiled and ruin their enjoyment. And there are some surprise gags in here, which we're actually going to mention. So, be aware of that.
Yes.
Um, before we do the rounds of introductions, I'm actually going to say hello to people in the chats already because we have people chatting. Starting with Facebook Live, Josh Jackson, welcome to the show and hello. We don't have anybody on Nerd Caliber's chatting yet, although we got a couple of watchers. And on YouTube, which is where we usually see our people, pardon me, Hero710, oi. I'm going to pronounce this Lucy, but I'm not really sure that's it. Gilu, hello. Misty McKenzie, hi. Kirishima Ejiro, hello. And Waifu Pennywise, welcome back to the show, and hello. So, tonight, our team is myself, Rodney Brown, editor in chief of Nerd Caliber, first person shooter on Facebook's, Burley underscore adopter on Twitters, and other things. And we will start with the man with the appropriate background, Byron, if you would.
Hello. Byron McNeil, aka Byron D0, artist, contributing writer, occasional social media personality, and recent escapee from the water tower. um, I do a lot of different stuff on the internet. But my claim, I don't even want to say claim to fame, but like the thing that I'm most proud of is my art.
Your
I
claim to
have,
future fame.
yes, my claim to future fame, but I'm most proud of my art and my writing. So I write, I do the occasional think piece for Nerd Caliber as well. I do a lot of reviews. I also draw my own webcomic series called Codename Blackbird. I'll give you the links at the end of the show. And I've just changed the name of my Instagram. It's BD0Art. So it's a lot easier to digest and just put into your brain.
So your,
So
your last one was the artist known as Byron D
known as
Zero. You're
Byron.
getting shorter and shorter. Eventually, you are going to just be a symbol like Prince, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All
Every
right.
time.
Byron. So BD0 Art.
Yes.
Awesome. And the man that started all of this way back, gosh, more than 10 years ago now, founder of Nerd Caliber. Manny, introduce yourself if you would.
My name is Manny. I am the founder and current video editor for Nerd Caliber, and feel free to send me your checks. I'll send it. I'll give you the address at the end of this video.
The big checks. Let's see. So, also, Mr. Krikonian, welcome again to the show. My favorite Animaniac was the Nurse Stripper. Hello, nice. Um, okay. Waifu Pennywise, I heard about the controversial Easter egg in the first episode of the show where it had a picture of Johnny Depp and there was a title that said Johnny Depp telling lies, and many people were pissed. I did not see that.
Neither did I.
I didn't see that either. I'll double check though, because there are a lot of Easter eggs in their episodes. Things happen really fast, so
Yes.
maybe. Although the series was written around 2018, so was the Johnny Depp controversy happening around then?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it was starting to pick up momentum.
yeah. They've been in court off and on for 2 years. Yeah,
Okay.
at least 2 years. Yeah, I'll look into that too, waifu. I don't remember that, but then again, I do remember that when they break into the CEO's office and the CEO discusses what a tablet is, there are things on that tablet, and I don't remember what they are. But that may be the case. Um, but as we always do, we're going to start with talking about what this is and what it was, and because that's important here. We generally talk about original sources when we talk about some of this stuff. Animaniacs started back in 1993 as an animated cartoon sketch comedy show produced by Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment and Warner Brothers Animation. It was originally on Fox, which I forgot, for a couple of years before it moved to WB and lasted until 1998. And then has spawned a couple of other specials, and including the wonderful Wacko's Wish,
Yes.
which is a great standalone movie. It's really worth it.
A great Christmas movie.
Um, Waifu Pennywise says no, it was in the reboot. Yeah, that's what we're discussing overall about this show is the reboot. Waifu Pennywise. I'm talking about now where the reboot came from. So they decided back about 2018 that it was time to reboot the series. And they got the original voice cast of Wacko, Yakko, and Dot, and a lot of the original voice casts of other secondary characters. Although we'll get into this, they don't use very many of them except Pinky and the Brain. That's the only regular, ongoing other character bit that happens in these shows. And so they got the original voice of the Brain as well. Yes. So we've got Yakko is Rob Paulson, Wacko is Jess Hartnell, and Dot is
Tress McNeely.
Tress McNeil. I was going to call her Teresa. Oh, thank you, because it wasn't Teresa. That's why I hesitated. And Pinky is also Rob Paulson, and Brain is Maurice LaMarche. And it just premiered November 20th on Hulu. It is available to binge on Hulu because that's Hulu's business model. They don't do, like Netflix, they don't do weekly shows. That's not true. They did weekly with the Runaways.
Really?
Also, that Stephen King
Apple Rock?
with JFK, the one about JFK.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And was it Hulu that Castle Rock was on?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. So I stand corrected. They or sit corrected. They do usually parse these things out over weeks, but not with Animaniacs. You can watch the whole thing, binge it. So that's the history of it and where we are now with this 2020 launched reboot. They did a wonderful advertising campaign. This is from the first few minutes of the first episode, which they released the first minute as basically an ad. And those are the original voice actors or the original actors from Jurassic Park and Steven Spielberg. So
Really?
they definitely pulled out all the stops for that one. So our first question for all of us here on the team is, how do you think it compares to the original? What changes do you note, and which of those changes do you like, and which do you dislike? Let's start with Byron.
Well, as a whole, I think it feels like they never left. If we're being completely honest, the jokes land as they always have. It's a great little pick me. It's a great little pick me up throughout the day, especially in 2020. I wouldn't say there are any changes that I generally dislike, but I initially found the crisper art style a little off-putting. Just because it was not what I was expecting. It looked like, at first glance to me, at least, it looked almost Flash, and like it was animated in Flash. But the more, like, as I watch the show now, it's like, okay, this actually looks really good. It's it's again, it's like it never left. Um, One of the things I definitely like about it most, well, it's the thing I like about all of the Animaniacs media is like it's entertaining as hell.
So you'd say that's not a change necessarily, because it was
Mm,
entertaining as hell before.
yes, oh, absolutely.
All right.
Well, yeah, I was saying the change, like the only change I could see is the visuals. Um, the themes, like the theme song we write isn't as catchy as the original, but they can't that yeah, that theme song was one of the most topical parts of Animaniacs, so you can't.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I like the updated theme song because it is almost identical to the original, except the addition of the sort of socially aware, the gender neutral and so on lines.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that was that. Yeah, that definitely did work. I was just I was saying that to say that I don't hate the theme song. It's just it's going to like I have the original like down pat. Like I can't forget it no matter how hard I try. So it's
Maybe I'm not
that part.
remembering it well enough, but to me it's identical except for those minor lyrical changes.
Yeah, which is fair. It's like that's just how my brain works, though.
All right.
I'm still like I still hear like the references to like the Goodfellas when Rita and Runt and
Right, but
Button.
yeah, okay, I get that. Since those characters are not in this reboot,
Yeah,
for the most part,
yeah,
then yeah, all right, I get that. Um,
and no Bill Clinton. You can't reference Bill Clinton because he's not exactly relevant.
yeah, except that one time they did in the first episode, which
Hmm.
give them credit for that. Waifu
Mwah!
Pennywise,
Not everybody.
yeah, they look clean. It's like, yeah, okay, that's a one change that Byron definitely mentioned that it is a much cleaner line style, um, and they definitely from the original. If you look at some of the original artwork, there is a little bit of sort of cell shading to create a little bit more of a sort of a three-dimensional look. And I get what you mean by they look a little flatter because that's not part of it in this new reboot. Manny, same questions. Changes did you notice? What do you like better? What do you think is not as good?
The comedy. So I expected this show to let me down. I'm not gonna lie, because
Oh, estimates.
so many reboots have tried and either I just outgrown them or it's just the writing is just not as great.
Voltron. Sorry.
Voltron.
But the writing in the show is great. I expected to not like the first. You know how like sometimes when you watch a new series, the first episode is usually not that great, and the second one's okay, and the third one it just gets a little better and better each time. It wasn't like that with this. It was good from the start. It's funny. It's interesting. I think the humor is really geared toward our age group a little bit because, for example, they did a Leroy Jenkins joke,
Yes. Yes.
which no one under 12 is gonna get that. And but yeah, the show has always been like a really smart show, even from its days in the 90s. So the writing's superb. The one thing that it just bugs me just a little bit, but it's not a big deal. But it it's that they usually is always a third episode or a episode somewhere where it's usually a new random character. It could be the chicken that thinks it's everyone thinks it's a man, or the Goodfellas birds, little things like that. I like because it kind of broke it up. Picking the brain so it's usually Warner Brothers and sister, and Picking the Brain, and then a little skit with the Warner Brother and sister. But for me, it felt kind of monotonous a little bit because it lacked that randomness that I liked in the other show. But I mean, those are great characters. Everyone was picking the brain, and those episodes are just as good too. I was really surprised how well written these episodes are.
Especially that first episode.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Waifu Pennywise brought up the point since we mentioned or I mentioned the gender neutral thing. Um, that somebody's been sending around the comic where it shows somebody asking the Warner siblings about their genders, and um, Yakko says boy, Dot says girl, and Wacko says other. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and
I've read that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's been around for years, so it is canon.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so one thing I think before I get into the stuff that I thought answering my own question, I got to lay this on the table, and it's something that earlier in the discussion before we went on the air, we all kind of admitted to. Um, I have only seen halfway through the all 13 episodes, or basically halfway. I've only seen through episode 6, and as it turns out, we all share that um, at various levels, and I think this isn't a change in the show. This is a change in entertainment that I think needs to be addressed. I don't think this show works as a bingeable show.
No.
And I think the problem is because the humor is so fast and so, their term zany, that it takes effort. It takes effort to try to pay attention to everything that's going on every second in this show. Um, and I find that I can't make it past 2 episodes back to back. I need a break.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely more than fair.
and I don't think I'm alone in that. I don't think it's it's an old man can't watch movies kind of thing. I think it's really the nature of the kind of humor or the pacing of the humor in this show, which would be exactly the same with the original one, um, and how that doesn't work if you're trying to watch multiple. So essentially, what you're doing is you're watching 3 skits per hour, and then try to do that hour after hour after hour. Um, for me, I just that doesn't work for me. Um, and one other thing, which I think I'm not crazy about the audio mix. I find if there's one thing that they're doing that they didn't change that I think they should have, is that today having a full orchestral soundtrack for everything and having that be the way you punch up a joke, you kind of lose the vocal part of the audio at times.
Mm.
I find it really hard, and it's not the voice actors; their voices have not changed, which is shocking.
Mm.
Um, it's I think the audio mix. I think that they rely a little too heavily on this older school overuse of orchestral music for modern ears and modern audiences. That might be an old man thing. You never know. We have a bunch of people just dropped in. Probably going to screw this up. Buzin Krippus, oi. Welcome to the show. Tessie Maipi, welcome to the show. Gacha Rosa, welcome to the show. Whenever anybody else joins in, we usually give them the warning we're spoiling Animaniacs. I'm not sure how much that can be spoiled. It's a sketch comedy show. But if you haven't seen the recent reboot of Animaniacs and you don't want to know anything about it, this would be the time to bounce out of the show. Our show. Not necessarily the Animaniacs. So, changes the animation style. Byron's already mentioned that. I wasn't worried about the fact that you lost some of that three-dimensionality by not having the cell shading if I got crisper, clearer stuff that could be seen in high def. That's a trade-off I'm 100% fine with. The other changes are what Manny mentioned. You don't have nearly as many cast members. None of the supporting cast outside of Pinky and the Brain make any appearance but for part of a single sketch so
Ralph
far.
the Guard.
Hmm?
Ralph the Guard.
Well, okay. I mean, aside from Ralph the Guard, yes, Ralph the Guard makes multiple appearances. But I mean, any of the other people that had their own, or characters that had their own individual sketch bits, like Goodfeathers, Um, like, well, there's a skit that has many of them in it, but not really doing anything. Um, and and that's kind of the only thing that the only role that they play so far, anyway. Um,
Oh, the suffrage skit.
no, actually, they are kind of in that, although that has an awful lot of other cartoons from other things. You're right, they are in that too, but no, there is one skit, and I think it's episode 5, that specifically focuses on, sort of what happened to all of these other characters.
Ah,
Um, and I agree with Manny that that makes it a little less of something. It would probably be more bingeable if they did have more characters because you're not going back and forth from the Warners to Pinky and the Brain to the Warners.
well, yeah,
Um,
it's like going to a buffet and only having and only having two options.
right. Yeah, and their options are hilarious. Um, so if there are changes that I think, like Manny said, I think the writing is a little bit more geared towards the people who watched the previous show, so adults. In some aspects, and one of those aspects is political and social commentary. I mean, the show never shied away from pop culture commentary, like a Prince joke we were referring to earlier. Um,
Finger prints.
but it was never the sort of political show that this is.
Mm.
This
Yeah,
is
I have to look back at the old stuff to see if they were just as political. To me, it just went over my head if it was.
well, it wouldn't have to me. I mean, I'm not that much older than you, but older enough that I was in my 30s when this show was on the air. So and I've always been political active since I was 13. So it was much more about sort of social commentary about pop culture stuff than it was political stuff like um, that's in the first episode. You
Hmm.
know,
I yeah, going on some of those jokes. I did kind of notice that compare like a big difference that I noticed between, let's say, Piggy and the Brain, at least in the first episode. The jokes were a lot more innocent in Piggy and the Brain. I feel like in the first episode of the reboot, when they were talking about when Pinky and the Brain were talking about the internet, and Pinky says, "I think so, Brain. Well, I didn't think I'm allowed to say." I'm just
yeah,
like,
and
oh, we're
being
going
Brain asking
there.
him what the
Okay.
internet was for. Um,
We all know it's
You know,
right.
I think in a way it has to do more commentary because if it's to grow, I don't think it can ever go back just being just completely wacky. It has to say something now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think so. Part of it is that that's since they did it, it's been done to death by The Simpsons, by Robot Chicken, by you know they do pop culture social commentary. Bob's
South
Burgers.
Park.
Hmm?
So it's South Park.
Oh,
Mm.
South Park. Yeah. Well, South Park also has deep, deep political and social commentary as well. So, um, but because of that, I find it funnier.
Mm.
Um, you know, uh, generally, I'm a chuckler. If I really love comedy and if I'm watching something, as a rule, I'm chuckling. Um, there were belly laughs in every single episode of this I've watched. Like really laugh out loud moments. The really super smart writing. I'm gonna say better than the original series. But again, that's 28 years or 27 years, so who knows? Um, I don't remember it that well.
Mm.
And unlike Manny, I wasn't dedicated enough to watch any of the previous episodes before the show. So,
Mm.
so kudos to Manny. Um,
I have the DVDs.
yes, yes. So things that I don't like about it. Um, Honestly, the only thing I really don't like, or only things I don't like about it are, as Manny said, the lack of variety of characters for the different skits. Um, and and this is just, I understand why they're doing this, and this is just me. I kind of miss the much more regular use of innuendo. Um, the hello nurse and good evening folks, those types of jokes, while I get are not necessarily nearly as appropriate as they were back then, or maybe never were appropriate at all. But I found them really funny, and if the trade-off is that they're going way more political than sort of sexual innuendo, then okay, the political stuff makes me really laugh. But the innuendo stuff would always make anybody laugh.
Yes, I definitely like. I can see why they abstained from it for a
Right.
number of reasons. Mainly, my mind at least, it's sex jokes are low hanging fruit. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it was they were those jokes in particular were definitely a product of their time because like the '90s was all about edge. It
Yeah.
was all about how much you could get away with, how much could you push the envelope, and that's why I feel this IP has such a special place in our hearts because of how much like you just wonder like how much can a kid show get away with before the censors are just like nope.
Apparently, the censors did actually censor one particular character. I can't remember who it is. A lot. Um, okay, I actually have the.
Was it a squirrel? Probably the squirrel. I forgot the character's name.
Slappy the squirrel. Slappy squirrel. No,
Oh no, Minerva Mink.
Hmm?
Was it Minerva Mink? Because I feel
Yes.
like
Yes, it was Minerva Mink.
yes, she's definitely. I I heard that somewhere years ago because like she was a very sexualized character.
Yep. And apparently that ran foul of the censors all the time,
Mm-hmm.
which is why they basically pulled way back on Minerva Mink bits because they just couldn't write them and get them past the censors. Waifu Pennywise, I remember like it was in the 2000s, but I remember I never had anything fancy when I was young, but I remember I used to have some box TV and saw the show on Hub. I'm not really sure what Hub is. Uh,
Hub. I think it's the Hasbro network. I think.
it could be, but they would show old shows and current ones, and that's apparently where you saw this. So that's cool. In that case, it's not that far back in your memory like it is for us old folks. Um, so the question then, as we posted in sort of the title of this thing, is this like the best reboot ever? Um, is that a low bar so it doesn't matter? Um, you know, let's weigh in on that. Byron, start up again. Where do you think this falls in either on its own as a reboot and or compared to other reboots that have happened?
Well, I'll start off saying it doesn't feel like a reboot. It feels like a continuation.
Yep.
So, yeah, which it's because of what Animaniacs is. It's like it is it's what Warner Brothers Animation has been like was in its infancy. It is episodic. It's episodic comedy, which is all you really need. Which is all Love's really needed, and more so to add to the discussion about binging it. Um, I feel like as adults, it's harder for us to binge it because we're used to episodic stories. We're used to like an interconnecting narrative, and that's never been what those classic Warner Brothers Merry Melodies cartoons were about. They were like one and done. Get like a quick hit. Even back when they were still where they were primarily in theaters, it was always just like something. It was always a little teaser before the main event started. It was an appetizer.
Yeah.
So, which is why which is what I'll get back to that point when we start talking about it more. But
Yeah, well, so let's talk about that now instead of getting
okay,
into the question, because that question can always happen. I,
yep.
I think I agree. I can't imagine sitting there and watching, a day's worth of back-to-back episodes of Black Mirror.
Mm.
Um, they're episodic. They don't ever connect, other than the fact that they're sort of generally about technology and how that could be a problem. Um, because of the fact that there is no interconnecting narrative, unlike binging a season of Buffy or something.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a good point. But it sounds like you have things to expand on that.
Well, yeah, like it's hold on. Yeah. The biggest thing I take from it is that the reason, like, the main reason I feel that it says it's the test time because of, like, it was initially geared towards kids, and just like a lot of these Looney Tunes cartoons, like, they were geared towards kids, but they were something for the adults as well. It respected animation as a medium instead of trying to just make something for kids to just watch to keep them pacified. And I if they were to try to give it a narrative and try to make it episodic, it would be almost an affront to its origins.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, and thank God they didn't try to do that with a reboot. I can't imagine. Um, Although there is in episode 6, there is a wonderful, just one shot, one line joke that's a callback to episode 5 of this reboot, and so that's not an interconnective narrative. It's just a wonderful, and like they break the fourth wall all the time anyway, so it's just a wonderful jump back.
Like in
Um,
episode 2.
yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, they break the fourth wall all the time, and throughout the course of the series, they break the wall, getting back to the fact that the first episode is the only time they rely on, and they say this to the audience, they rely on the jokes about the fact that it's been since the 90s,
Yes.
that they've been on TV. And they get the Bill Clinton joke out of the way, and they get, nobody knows what a tablet is, blah, blah, blah. And then they're done. But occasionally they'll make a reference back to that. Um,
I think that was one of my biggest fears going in with this reboot. Was I was just terrified that it was going to be they were going, like, all the jokes were going to be geared towards that.
yeah. Yeah. Gosh, look how things have changed. I think that may have been, and I may be putting thoughts in your head, Manny, but that may have been one of the concerns that you had, why you thought it potentially would be letting you down. Is that it was going to be just, oh, look, all these 90s jokes. Everybody remember Friends? Oh,
Or worse, that the jokes will just be flat.
yeah.
You know. Um, uh, Going back to your question, is this the best reboot? It's pretty close. I think, right, if you ask me what's the best reboot of anything so far, Doctor Who's probably my number one get. Well, I will say it's my number one. Really close being DuckTales also.
Yeah, I was going to
DuckTales,
say that's my number one.
yeah, DuckTales reboot is the new DuckTales is amazing, and I'm really surprised that Disney's not it's going to cancel it, which is pretty strange to me. It's actually a really good show. DuckTales has always been one of my favorite Disney properties, next to Gargoyles. Um, but this is good, and like Byron said, this feels like a continuation. It doesn't feel like it really stopped, or it just had a long pause, if anything, because it's the wackiness just going. And unlike some other reboots, they actually acknowledge the past a lot. Like, hey, this is what happened to us 20 years ago. We just did this,
Yeah.
that Pinky and the Brain episode where they said, oh, 20 years we've been researching the internet, all
Yes.
for nothing, obviously. But yeah, if I don't, to say the best, I can't say it yet until like I watched the whole season and the next season that's coming out in 2021, because to me it's just too early to say. But wow, so far it's really close.
Yeah. I gotta say, it didn't even occur to me to consider this thing as not a reboot, but you're right. It really isn't. It is the closest thing that has happened. I hate to say it. The only other thing I can think of like this would be like Fuller House, where it's literally a continuation of the story, but 20 years later.
Or Doctor Who.
Well, so because Doctor Who is a time travel story, it's almost impossible to call it a continuation of the story, because the story jumps around.
Yeah.
And constantly retcon.
Right. Yeah. All the time.
Right.
Um, So while yes, that is a continuation of the story, it's not like it's a specific continuation of um, the story within a timeline, which Animaniacs is, and again, horrible reference, but Fuller House was or is. I don't know if it's still on. Who cares? Um,
I think it just ended, actually.
so for me, honestly, the best reboot ever, and it occurred to me literally the second I typed this when I was setting up the event, is Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
Um,
that is very good, actually.
it took something that was campy and a little cheesy and occasionally interesting and sentimental, and turned it into the best science fiction action drama tense show possibly ever made.
I want
Um,
to chime in when you're done. Okay.
so, so in that case, I would say it's not the best. And if we are considering a reboot, even though I think I'm agreeing with you now, it can't be considered a reboot. It's just a continuation. Yeah, Animaniacs is right up there. Um, but go ahead, Byron.
Yeah. So Manny was saying that DuckTales is a close second. I'd say for me, like it's a tie between DuckTales and She-Ra because, like,
Mm.
just like Battlestar Galactica, it took this it took this hokey toy commercial type series and fleshed out every single character in ways that Filmation never tried to do tried to do.
Yeah,
Way more than Masters of the Universe ever tried to do.
yeah, and way more than, from what I understand, I haven't watched all of it, but way more than would have been required, or most people think of just thinking about the series as something. Oh, it's a reboot for kids who are socially aware because it's got a lesbian couple in it. It's like it's so much deeper than that in every character, including the villains.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Actually, I have an incendiary third place one. Thundercats, 2011.
I liked it.
Yeah, well, I say incendiary because it was shot down in its prime.
Well, true. Yeah, it's a show that should have gone longer. I was enjoying it. I would have enjoyed more. Um, but yeah, top reboots. I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far. Um, but in any event, I think Animaniacs. I think we all agree that assuming we're going to call it a reboot, and I think it really probably shouldn't be. Then
No.
yeah, it's definitely way up there. Um, in continuations, let's call it that. So that's pretty much it. That's the all of the topics we wanted to talk about on the show. Well, actually, you know what? Let's get into the one controversial aspect of it, at least as far as the internet people think, and that is that political and socially aware humor. Um, and I'm going to start on this one. I love it. I absolutely I it's some of the funniest biting political and social commentary. There's an entire episode about about gun rights that is the least subtle thing you've ever seen because all they do is they replace guns with rabbits, or as they call them, buns, and it's about the right of people to own buns.
Genius.
And it's hilarious, and it's every point they make is on point and funny. Um, they definitely do not characterize the supporters of this movement as smart people. Um, and in that case, I know a lot of people who are very smart and are misguided about this concept of gun rights, misguided in my mind. Um, that bothered me a little bit because it makes it a little simplistic.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, just the fact that they would touch it at all and then come down so hard on a side, um, as they did with with the Odysseus get. Let me bring him back up here. And the giant orange Cheeto Cyclops,
Yes.
which was one of
Everybody
the
wants
best.
to come to this island. I can see it with my two eyes.
It's a great island. It's one of the best. It just so I love that update. The fact that they are going hardcore on making their political statements. Anybody gonna gainsay that or have other things on that?
I'm here for it. That's all I really can say.
Yeah. Well, I think they know their audience and they know their fan base, and I think they're just keeping up with the times. Again, if they wanna, if Animaniacs needs to survive in 2020, 2021, I mean, if they, again, to revert back to just doing dumb comedy, it's not going to work nowadays.
No, not at all.
That is. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Adding to that, it a lot of people. There are a lot of people who grew up watching the show. My youngest sibling, my sister, she's one of those people. Like, she's got 2 daughters now, and I know for a fact that she appreciates the more biting commentary, but at the same time she can share this with her children now as well.
Yep.
So they know who their key demographic is. It's not the kids per se. Yep. Well, it's not the little kids, I should say. It's the big kids and their kids.
Yeah, good point. Josh Jackson on Facebook. Hi again. So if you missed us responding to you, Josh, we did it earlier in the show, but hi, glad you're on Facebook. Yeah, so that, one of the cool things about the show is right now they are clearly doing their best to appeal to kids and also to adults in every aspect of it. So here's a couple of bits of animation changes that they do. There's an episode where they become anime fighting characters. And it's hilarious. This is what they look like, and it's a wonderful episode. There's another one, if I can find it. Maybe I didn't pick that one. Oh, my bad. There's another one where they become essentially like just so cute it makes you want to vomit.
Which is a callback to the cute song.
Yes, and also a clear nod to Rainbow Bright, Hello Kitty, all of that stuff. And it's also just absolutely spot on. Wonderful animation change that clearly is designed to appeal to both the kids because it's stuff that they relate to and that they watch, but also to the adults who remember some of this stuff. Yakko basically turning into Goku at one point. Pretty much.
That was great.
Waifu Pennywise. Oh no, I've seen a lot of personal art of Anime Dot. Yeah, we're not going to get into any personal interpretations of any of these characters.
No.
But yes, all of that stuff. What is it? Rule 34.
Yep.
Rule 34. If it's been created, there's a porn version of it. So that's it, folks. That's the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. We hope to see you Tuesday on our Nerd Week Live news show. We got all sorts of very interesting topics, not the least of which is stuff about the upcoming Hawkeye series that just dropped, which is wonderful. And then next week, not really sure what our topic is. We were supposed to be doing Bill and Ted this week, and I think we're going to be holding off on that for a month to allow another one of our regulars to come back on who's going to be off for a while. Infinity Train might be the next one because Manny wants it to be. The Waifu Pennywise, if you see any of them, what we were referring to earlier, make sure you get bleach. Yeah. So actually, don't put bleach in your eyes, but yes, good point. You'll want to, trust me. And speaking of that as well, so before we all sign off, again, folks, please stay safe. Wash your hands, clean your counters, wear your mask, keep socially distant. There's a study that came out just now from Korea that shows, because Korea tracks infections, they actually track people who are infected, shows an infection happening within an enclosed restaurant by people who were separated by 2.9 meters. So that's 9 feet. That's not 6 feet. They were separated by 9 feet, and one infected the other.
Wow.
And this is Korea, where they were wearing masks until they got until they started eating, which is one of their guidelines, and they were it's just a kind of culture where they're used to wearing masks. So be careful, folks. Stay safe. And on that, Byron, take us out.
All right. Byron D0, very Renaissance man of the internet. I want to promote my webcomic. It is www.codenameblackbird.thecomicseries.com.
Awesome.
Read it. It will leave you satisfied. Mwah! Good night, everybody.
And that's fantastic. And Manny.
Take care, everybody. Be safe and watch out there.
And for me as well, everybody, have a good weekend. Be safe. Enjoy the colder weather for those of you who like this sort of stuff. Not all of us, mind you, but and we will see you sometime next week, ideally. Bye-bye.